Good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from Mason Works Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with my friend Angelia LaRue. Hi, Ange. Good morning. So, Angie, we are going to be talking about non-local consciousness as part of our talk today, because that gives people a little bit of a peek into your presentation for IONS. But let's first talk about your journey to consciousness, how you had that experience so people can understand your superpowers.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. So I think for me that the journey of superpowers actually began as a child, but I had no idea. I did not recognize it. Even traveling out of body, I think, happened as a child. I can go back and I can remember some specific events that happened, but I was told it was my imagination. And it seemed different than my imagination, but I was an adult, and so I trusted the adults. And then in 1996, in the Amazon basin, which I'll be talking a lot more about in my talk at Washington, D.C., at the Crystal Hotel during the IONS conference. But I contracted Shigella dysentery and also got medicinal poisoning from expired tetracycline, which we did not know it was expired. The pharmacy sold it in a Ziploc bag, so there was no way to know. And I died and I left my body and was still aware and present. I just didn't have a body. Now, eventually I did return, which is why I'm here today. And when I came back, a lot of my senses seemed a lot more heightened, but I didn't know that it wasn't just some side effect from Shigella dysentery and tetracycline. But as the years went by, we reached 2011, December 9th of 2011, and I had a radical Kundalini awakening. And with that, all the abilities slammed back in, and there was no denying them. And I had to learn to cope with them. And that took quite a few years. I went out on the road. I became a spiritual gypsy, listening to the voice of spirit and my higher self alone, and began training. Somewhere in that first year of the journey, which was about 6 solid years, somewhere in the first year, I realized what had actually happened to me in the Amazon, and that we are not our brains. We are consciousness, and brain is a tool to help us navigate down here in the third dimension. And so these days, my life has become a balance or balancing. It's kind of a verb of these different states of being able to move out of the body and go and see and explore and get questions answered, and being in the body and doing the everyday things that we have to do to actually take care of our body and have a human experience.
So, Angie, you had in 2007, you had a Kundalini awakening that is very similar to spiritually transformative experiences or near-death experiences, where it creates a exposure to a world that is totally different than this reality. How did you integrate that? I mean, you said you became a gypsy, you a wanderer to try to integrate, but how did you have access to a higher self that guided you? Is that how you did it?
Yeah, I did. There was a voice in my head, and not just a voice in my head, but a lot of it was kind of kinesthetic. It was urgings within the body as well. And so there was just this whole other system that was informing and talking to me and being in communication. And, that eventually led to the dark night of the soul. So there was this battle that took place between the ego and the brain and this other intelligence that was now loudly present. And the brain had to reach the point of surrender. It kind of had to break. It had to admit fully on every level that it wasn't the boss of everything and that it just didn't have the access and it just didn't have the tools to answer the looming questions and situations that were now present in reality, and that some other aspect of myself had that knowledge. And so this teamwork had to be developed between what was dimensionally appropriate, was which aspect of the self was vested that at whatever dimension of consciousness or reality that we were dealing with. And so we kind of had to, I ended up with a boardroom, and a number of different aspects of self sitting at the table, and to learn how to be a team and work together. And brain always does try to be the boss, like it's the one that always kind of tries to take over everything. But it knows at the very root of its existence that it is not the best one for every part of navigating reality. It does good with like 70% of it, but or maybe 50%, and it's very good at that part, and needed and very important team player. But there's just a lot of reality that it just cannot handle. It doesn't have the tools. It wasn't built that way. It didn't evolve that way, and it has to turn over the reins to other aspects of the self, which were built that way and were evolved to handle those aspects. So we're talking moving through time, manifesting telepathy, psychic abilities, seeing into the future, traveling into the future, also understanding all time and spaces now. And, many of the other spiritual skills, healing, being able to see into the body, et cetera, et cetera. These are things that brain can only step down and move out of the way and let other aspects of the self do. And then it can report back on that reality, or it can translate things into English. It does good as a translator, but it can't do the doing.
I understand.
Yeah, so those 6 years from 2011 forward was really getting the team working together and playing together nicely in the sandbox, given the new reality that was now available and still is persistently existing.
Right. So your capacity to see a bigger field and to understand and sense from a bigger awareness, I call that the sixth sense. It might be more than six. It might be 106, but that's what I call that. And it's very interesting to be in both the here and there, and it is doable, right?
It is doable, if the ego can be humble enough. Because there's also something kind of psychotic about it, because because most of the world only experiences one reality, and it's a reality of solid objects, and it's an objective reality. But there's aspects of ourself in which all of these things that we consider solid are just vibrating atoms, and you can move in between them, like a room full of balloons clear to the ceiling. You can move through all of that, and consciousness can move through all of that. So you kind of juggle multiple realities, that multiple realities exist, and which aspect of the self is best lined up to deal with that reality or move in that reality. And so, yeah, it's really interesting. And if the brain tries to think about it too hard, it'll just go crazy, because again, it just doesn't have the information to deal with it correctly. All it can do is surrender and let somebody else drive the car for a little bit.
Well, one of the things that I love about you is that you're so capable of teaching this, and very few people that have access to the fields that you have can articulate it. It's mystical, but yet practical in a lot of senses. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because you founded a mystery school, and so you are very capable of taking someone by the hand and helping them discover their own genius in this way. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, I would love to. So I think part of it is demystifying what we really are. So it's not that I was born with specific skills, although they did show up pretty early in life. We actually all have them. And we have them because God made us. We are children of the divine. Now, when we come into this world, we are trained to use our left brain to analyze, be rational, feel things, get proofs about things. And that works really well for living life at a particular plane of reality, which most of us would agree that is reality. But in fact, it's not. There is many, many more layers of reality. And God gave us aspects to perceive and work and do within those other realities. And it's not covered in school, and our families, for the most part, never talk about this. The churches, religion suppresses it because it gets in the middle of their game and makes that a little bit of a competitor. Because a lot of religions have only, one savior or a few saints and sages, special people who got these special abilities. But we actually all have them. So the first level of teaching is really just kind of understanding you already are that. And we're just going to figure out the pathways to what you already have, to what you were given. And then being able to clearly speak and clearly demonstrate. And, day one of class, somebody is running energy. Day two of class, we're playing with, chi balls. So we retrain the brain by hands-on. We're doing it, and we're doing things you didn't know that you could do, or maybe you forgot since childhood because you already played with some of this as a child. So that combination of understanding what you really are, improving it to yourself through exercises which show that you actually can do this, and demystifying it and removing all the fear and the programming that's around that. And then continued practice in a variety of settings. And a lot of it is game settings. We learn best when it's fun, right? And so doing that in exciting game settings or highly.
Oh, no. Oh, well, she'll be back, I'm sure. So what I want to explain about Angie is, again, this capacity that she has to communicate and share as a teacher is rare. She's a healer, a Crystologist. She makes these amazing, this is a tower one, that most of them are half the size. She makes these beautiful orgone generators. Actually, I've got this is the big one. But anyway, but her articulation and her capacity to bring others into an understanding and a usable understanding is rare. I mean, lots of people have these gifts that they can do things themselves, or they can touch the mystical part of reality and play around with it, but not very many people can take someone's hand and carry them through. I did show them this.
Okay. Yeah.
This is the bomb, though.
So alchemy is a part of the spiritual path. So it's kind of a lot of different steps on the spiritual path, different realizations. And, as we open one thing, another thing opens, and we open that, another thing. And pretty soon it's all combining. And we end up in alchemy. And alchemy is where we become creators, like the creator who made us. And we begin to pull in our particular knowledge, and that creativity, that invention, that creatorship bubbles up within. And then we go down that path for a while. So it's all actually very organic in a way. Like once we give permission to it, for it to unfold, our divine aspect, that indwelled God, which is in us, once we claim that heritage and accept it, a lot of it unfolds organically and naturally. And it's surprising how easily things like telepathy can actually come when we make space for it in our head. And so, a lot of what we do is removing stuff. So, if we have a glass, right, and it's full of water, we can't really put milk in. And so if we pour some water out, we can put some milk in, and then we pour some more out and put some more milk in, and eventually it's going to be all milk, right? And so that's kind of what we're doing, is we're clearing out a lot of past beliefs, past little stop signs inside of ourselves that said, stop here, you can't go any further, or do not pass here. And we're just kind of removing that and giving permission increasingly to ourselves to be all that we can be, and do that joyfully with curiosity. And yeah, the learning can actually come with consistency, quite regular. So, but it is kind of like a martial art. You're not going to be a fourth degree black belt on year one. You know, that repetition and that integrating and allowing and removing that which doesn't serve does take a little bit of time. But mastery does come, and once you own it, nobody can take it away. Right. Nobody can reprogram it. Once we know what we are, we don't back down from that. And what is important to us in the world changes a lot as well. And so it kind of comes together seamlessly in a beautiful way, and we kind of turn into a 2.0 version of ourselves.
Oh, that's funny that you said that, because that was my next question about the evolution of our species. Right now, we're going through this time period where there's more opportunity to clear the distortions, the patterns, the programs, however you want to call it, that are keeping us from joy, because our parents meant well, but a lot of the programs that they had were fear-based. And you can't be creative from fear. Well, you can create more fear, but you can't create love from there.
Fear makes us controllable. So when we're afraid, we look to those who would have answers. And, that puts them in a position of power, and they can distort it. They're either going to work from their heart to help people, or they're going to work from a place of profit or power. And we're in a time where we're really getting to see how quickly fear can be used to distort and steal joy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so this idea of sovereignty, knowing ourselves, know thyself, well, we're moving into a new age where that actually becomes the paradigm we have to move forward on.
Perfect. So how do crystals fit into all of this? You're a Crystologist, and that's a lot of the fun that I've had with you has been playing with crystals. How does crystals fit in with this overall knowledge and supporting the field for the awakening of your students and your clients?
So crystals are a couple things that are extraordinary, beyond everything that we think about crystals. But they produce two different types of energy. One is a flow energy that flows through them naturally, and the other one's a burst energy. If you crash two crystals together in the dark, you're going to see like lightning going off inside of them. It's really remarkable. So they're in energy form, but more than that, they're consciousness, meaning they can work with you. They respond really well to love and respect. Now, when we look at our computers and our technology and our cell phones and all that, they all have crystals in them. This is what a silicon chip is. And we use them kind of brute force to make broad spectrum battery and electricity be more refined, more clear, so it doesn't burn out miniature circuit boards and such. So we use them in a very blunt force 3D kind of way. But with higher states of consciousness, we can work with crystals consciously and develop relationship. And from relationship, from love, blooms all kinds of new possibilities and new potentials. And so now we can work with the natural essence of crystals, what they naturally do, which is reorder, straighten up, clean up energy, and then output that. Okay. With a consciousness, with teamwork, and create all kinds of new things. So crystals are kind of the base of the energy in Lemuria, jumping forward to Atlantis, the same. And here we are again. So even just working with crystals, but not just as a mineral or something, that's useful to us, but with consciousness unfolds all kinds of new potential and collaboration that can happen. So, and quartz crystals is particularly good at that. When you get into, the denser types of things, these aren't as programmable. They do have consciousness, but everything's kind of slower and heavier and denser. Where the ability to stream light, stream photons, makes quartz crystals more activated. They're kind of the smartest child in the class, right? And so the ability for light to penetrate, be absorbed and flow through, increases the potential to be able to work with in a teamship and collaborate with a crystal to create new potentials, new energy forms, new everything.
So I'm showing your website with your crystal bed array, which is behind you right now, which is a tool that you downloaded and created that shows the piezoelectric effect with the light streaming of the currents. And could you explain a little bit about that? I'd love for you to explain. Let's see if I can get it to go. This process of not only using the bed but using the crystal arrays. Could you speak with that?
So the bed is based on ancient Lemurian technology of how they ordered stone slabs into certain orders to create kind of a healing bed, which refurbished the cells and extended life and amplified healing, et cetera, et cetera. So I basically went back to that, studied it, brought the knowledge forward, and rebuilt it in a modern version, meaning, I can't get big 1-ton slabs, but I can get lots of small pieces and put them together. So,
ouch, ouch, ouch. A weight loss program.
uh,
Sorry.
And so that's really what we're looking at with the orgone generator crystal biobed. So it's based on the layering of single long chain organics with various minerals and crystals. And it has a crystal core in the center, and then layers going from foot to the head of different types of minerals, which support the health and vitality of, the blood, the muscle tissue, the tendons, the organs of elimination, organs of process and digestion, the brain stem, the brain. We have a lot of different organs that do different things, and different systems that do different things. And so the minerals are ordered to support that. So when you lay on the bed and it has a right side and a wrong side, like you don't want to put your head where the foot is because the way the magnetics are set up. So there's a magnetic field as well. So I'm pulling forward a lot of information in the alchemy of what I do. So when a person lays on, they're laying on an organized energy field specifically dedicated to each different region of their body. And then on top of that, I'll do a crystal array. So the crystal arrays are quartz crystals with their energy specifically pointing to the next crystal in the row to make a grid. And there's many different grids depending what it is we want to access, either in the body, the mind, or spiritually. And so we can evolve any area by doing this. And it's all powered by the orgone generator crystal biobed. So the crystal array is the specified specific thing that we're doing. And the orgone generator crystal biobed is the power source that powers that.
Well,
So
I think you're part of the formula. when I've been there and I watched you work on someone's hip, and they had been told they needed surgery, and after 3 sessions, their hip was repaired as though it had been replaced. I know that you're a big part of the healing with the bed and the crystals. But I want to let you know, Lizzie's in England, and she says, some time ago during sleep, I used to get covered by some of my crystals. Must have been doing it sleepwalking. So she's saying that she didn't realize. She said, "Wow, that's exactly how I used to wake up." So the the helpers and guides that we have in non-physical sometimes make it available. It's just like synchronicities.
Well, it's even possible when our body and mind is asleep, our consciousness is not, and it can leave the body, study the body, do healings on the body, and it can have the body, even while it sleeps, get crystals and set it in specific places. So I remember one time I got a phone call from a woman who built a crystal grid underneath her bed. The next day she checked on it, and it had completely reordered itself into a different configuration.
Wow.
Yeah. And, so it is amazing what we can do when consciousness is allowed to direct the body. Right. And if the mind is asleep, it's not in the way, and it's not interrupting things and second guessing it.
Okay. So I see you have this beautiful selenite slab behind you. And could you tell us a little bit about the selenite, what it does for the room and how that helps people?
So in our natural world, everything has a frequency. So everything that exists vibrates. Everything that vibrates does that at a certain vibrational rate, which we call frequency. So it's a sine wave, and frequency is the measurement of one peak to the next peak. So in the natural world, selenite, right behind me,
you got it,
vibrates at 244.5 megahertz. The only thing that vibrates higher is the dew on the petals of roses. It vibrates at 320 to 350 megahertz, depending on the health of the rose, the soil, et cetera, et cetera. So 244.5 is a bridge state to the fifth dimension or to the angelic realms. And so basically, that is kind of the cornerstone of the room that all the other crystals, and there are many in the room, kind of set themselves to or within the octave that they can reach of that energy that's output from there. And so there's a chorus or a container of harmonious energy in this room, which also amplifies. And then there's some additional gridding in this room so that when I close the door over here, the energy begins to swell and build up and get very saturated in this room. So if I'm not doing healing work or psychic work or teaching students, I keep the door open so that energy doesn't blow up and build up and blow my mind. And now I can't do, paperwork and computer stuff that I need to do. I can't do scheduling because now I'm in psychic space. So I'm able to control the buildup of energy, but it's set to 244.5 megahertz. And it's just a matter of saturation rate, which I can then control through the gridding and the rule sets in the room. And indeed on this entire floor of the building.
Yeah, you can feel it as you're walking up the steps, you guys. Well, what I wanted to share is that the balance and the container that you created with all these friendly helpers is an accelerator where you're healing and your psychic work. And so if for people that cannot come to Boulder, Colorado and get on the bed, they can still have some of these processes done remotely because of the nature of the tools that Angie has created, this container specifically for conscious development, really conscious and physical realignment, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So what a teacher, a spiritual teacher or a guru or, an esoterical teacher does is they hold a field. That field has the blueprints and the knowledge within it, and that helps us to accelerate or learn faster. So if our teacher is a sophist, meaning they read it in the book and they're teaching somebody else's reality, not a reality that they have embodied, indwelled, and can use, we learn much slower. But if the teacher themselves can do it and is on and do it in their own ongoing studies of that, they hold a field, and that field has accelerated knowledge in it. So even on Zoom, I can extend the field, and the field for me is supported by this room, and I can extend that over the Zoom. So those who are energy aware can already feel the energies that are coming through the screen to them.
Right.
So this understanding of how energy flows, works, can be turned up, can be turned down, and can be modulated within the frequency is an important understanding for us as humans, for evolving our consciousness, increasing healing, and moving out of wounds, which everybody has as just kind of part of being a human, is the bumps and and cuts and indignities. But we get where we can become very neutral and actually even use those as tools of the evolution of consciousness and to increase our compassion for others. So it's interesting how, given the right setting, everything can be turned around to our advantage for us. Right.
Well, and that's part of the benefit of these. When you start to expand your field of awareness, which is what I'm calling it, that's when people say, oh, I'm in the flow, or my intuition is working. When you start to have the field inform you in a different way, all of a sudden your fears seem to transmute, and the game is on. It's life becomes play instead of struggle. Victimization leads to a whole nother way of showing up courageously. It's quite amazing how this affects not just your physical body, but your emotional body, your spiritual body. So let's go back to consciousness, since we started there, because that's what this bigger awareness is. It's whatever aspect of consciousness you are comfortable or you're ready to play in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So do you want to talk a little bit about non-local consciousness? Because what we're talking about first is, in your classes, you teach people how to baby step their way into their awareness, that they're already doing it, that they can finish other people's sentences, or that if they're highly sensitive, they're already feeling the whole space. But you get them so that it's a toolkit rather than a inconvenience.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's some people, it is an inconvenience. They do things and they didn't intend to. But with the non-local consciousness that you are going to be talking about at IONS, and that you did a beautiful presentation at Society for Scientific Exploration in Boulder. Could you talk a little bit about the non-local consciousness next? Okay.
Absolutely. So I'll kind of start from the big picture. And the big picture, when God brings a piece of consciousness into reality, um, that piece of consciousness becomes self-determining, and it gets to decide what it wants to be. In this iteration, the piece of consciousness, which I'll call my higher self, which is probably an aspect of oversoul, chose to come into a family, be born as a baby called Angie. That becomes like a suit of clothing, right? So for right now, consciousness is experiencing the third dimension Earth through the vessel called Angie. All right, Angie's the operating system for that consciousness. Consciousness, or higher self, has had many other vessels as well, and will have many more in the future, right? So Angie is a vessel for consciousness. when Angie sleeps, the body sleeps and the mind sleeps. This is the closed. Consciousness can move out of it, out of body. This is what the lucid dreams and the astral travel and that kind of thing are. However, there are states of being that we can access that without being asleep. And now we're able to return to the body, to the mind, and give those memories to the mind, right? So we call this particular one theta state. So there's alpha, beta, theta, delta, and then there's actually a state called gamma that's above alpha, and this is super, super fast at thinking, reacting seamlessly. For the most part, we're running around in alpha state. But theta state is where we become more consciously flowy and are able to move our consciousness out of our body. So that's essentially what remote viewing is as well. And remote viewing can be trained up to the point it becomes a bilocation where you can be simultaneously in a room and exploring a civilization on another world, right? So this is the non-localness of consciousness, where the body and mind hold a container and an existence in this reality, but consciousness can move out of that body and that container and go to other places and return back, and that experience is absorbed and reported then by the mind. So, but the mind actually becomes the witness to the experience instead of the experiencer of the experience. And I hope that made sense.
Oh, well. Well, basically what I'm going to do the short version. The summary is that you can be aware of multiple locations at one time without conflict, actually with ease, and experience and grow your knowledge and your sensory perception that way. It is a quantum field that we live in, where we in language condense it to one field, or we have to condense it to be shared. Our actual awareness is collating from multiple realms, and they might be in multiple places. I'm going like this just because that's the space we have in this here, but it's
Yeah, so we call those frequency domains. So whatever, before we go into theta state, whatever we can tune our body, our mind, our consciousness to, whatever level of frequency, then when we get out of our vehicle and go walking in that new frequency domain, we have access to it.
perfect.
Right?
Perfect.
So we have to tune our consciousness to the domain or the reality or the experience that we want to be in, which is why astral travel can be a little dicey, because we're doing it because it is what we are and what we can do. But whatever our experience was during the day before we went to sleep, whatever as we went to sleep frequency we were in, is going to determine what level of the astral realms we go into. And so we could, end up in anything from heaven to hell. Right. And so we travel consciously. It's the same way. We want to, before we leave, we want to tune ourselves to the reality that we want to experience. There's a lot of good stuff out there to experience. And tuning yourself to 528 hertz, the frequency of love, is a great place to start for exploring the greater reality.
That's why people talk about having gratitude practice at the end of the day and dumping anything. But also, there's lots of ways to have answers for questions, problem solving when you go to sleep, and let your higher self do all the work, and you wake up popped with, oh, cool, I know what to do now. Exactly. Right?
Yeah. And when we go to sleep, a small percentage of what we do is we jump forward to the next day, and we run out the next day, and most of what we do is very repetitive, and we don't even need to check it again. but there's certain interactions or choice points or pivotal moments in each day where we do want to kind of get that information back to the brain. And that's why sometimes when situations come up, we're like, ooh, deja vu, this feels familiar. Or somebody says something and we're like, did you say that before? And it's like a memory because we'd already checked out the day and what was going to happen. And so we have this deja vu moment. And if we can consciously use that ability even more, we can make better choices in the moment of now as we hit it, because we've already played out both timelines. That if I make the choice to do the thing, if I don't make the choice to do the thing, because we've already checked it out of when we left our body at night. So a small percentage of what we do during those 7 to 9 hours that we sleep, or 6 to 9 hours that we sleep, is checking out the day. And that's actually not that much of time, because so much of what we do is repetitive anyway. Another thing that we do is we spend time with loved ones and friends. We help people. Maybe we go heal some people. And then some of it, we're just, having a cup of Joe in the astral with our angels, our guides, our friends, our higher self, or returning to source to rest and renew. So there's a lot of things I've discovered that we do during the night, and I don't think I know everything. I think there's still a lot I don't understand.
Well, it seems like a lot of this also it's integrating as it's needed. So the access of consciousness to the data that we're collecting, it may not all. It's like getting a download, and you hear a noise, but you don't know what it said, and it unpacks. It's almost like that as you are available, as more of the levels of awareness are available to you. You may not integrate them into some way of understanding, but part of this is trust. You trust in that you're protected, and that this whole journey is supposed to be a grand adventure rather than a struggle, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's interesting because on a higher level, we do know everything. We do understand everything. But when it filters down to our human brain, which is so very limited, yeah, it's kind of a very big mystery that it's like a big puzzle we're trying to put together and we're trying to solve at this level, right? At higher levels, we understand, we get it,
Yeah.
So there is kind of a, seek and find game aspect to it at the human level.
Right. I do think this is a game, and but it's not a game necessarily win-lose game. It's just supposed to be a joyful play, just like Shakespeare said that all the world's a stage. And I really think that's if we got back to that kind of fun part of it, that we would be better served than the power over to win that game. That's playing. Yeah.
It is definitely a happier path in life to step out of the mainstream and become more sovereign and more independent, and not be led in our beliefs, but discover who we are and live from our soul's knowledge of many lifetimes and many iterations.
Yes. We're here for the fun, and we forgot. That's all.
Right. Well, it is a garden. The Garden of Eden still exists, but it's at a higher level of consciousness, right?
Perfect. Okay, so Ange, let's go back to a little preview of your talk for Ions, if you wouldn't mind, so that people could get an understanding about how you used your superpowers in a actual study at the University of Colorado with a graduate student, I'm not sure what his title was.
Happy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll let you present, and again, I'll show at the very end. I can show the IONS website to help anchor this if you want. Okay.
So in the talk, I'll begin with the Amazon story, which I touched on just a little bit here, and a lot of how that didn't sink in at the time because there was nobody in my reality who had ever even heard of a near-death experience, and so people thought I had had some kind of hallucination and were trying to convince me that I did. I knew better because I actually did have a lot of hallucinations from the poisoning. And so I was a very on the spot, in the moment expert of what is a hallucination of the mind from poisoning versus what is an experience I don't have a context for. And the lack of understanding of that delayed my being able to move forward until 2011 when I had the spontaneous awakening of consciousness. And within days, I actually suddenly, for the first time, understood what happened back in the Amazon. And my curiosity about everything, and especially other worlds and other cultures and other ships and all kinds of things, led me to do a tremendous amount of exploration. And I've done hundreds of out-of-body travels, including taking other people with me, and all of us being able to collectively report on a shared experience. And so that did lead to, well, originally the university had put out a call for people who could influence a random number generator that was on a computer. And I actually wasn't interested because it was kind of child's play, and I had nothing to prove, and it just wasn't that interesting to me. But people in the community kept telling me, Angie, this is right up your alley. You should go and do this. And I actually finally ran into the young man who was heading up that project, and he got me very excited to go. And so I did. And of course, I was able to influence a random number generator, and I did that by jumping inside the computer. Because that was most effective. So that then, once he discovered what he did and saw the results, that then led to a second project, which was a time jump project. And they had me jumping forward to the lotteries on Friday, the big lottery in Florida, to predict the numbers. My battery is low. All right, Kathy, you want to talk? I apparently do not have a battery.
Okay.
Moment.
Okay. Whoops. There we go. So actually, I'm going to pull you off for a second. Okay. So what we're sharing today is the Angie has a remarkable capacity to be able to use. Okay. So I guess you can come back. There we go. To use her superpowers to help others. And it's not just in a healing realm. This is also remote viewing and other capacities. So I'm going to give you the screen again. There we go.
So we worked that time jump project using a variety of techniques: out-of-body travel, remote viewing, to make sure I was at the right time, in the right place, in the right timeline, because when you move out of body, there isn't an anchor for the time. And I was like giving correct predictions for lotteries 3 months ago. And so I had to learn to be able to anchor where it was in time they wanted me to be, and then report back. But I was reporting back using, under a process that it actually isn't the best, because it was kind of using third dimensional skills on a third dimensional subject. Numbers are abstract in the first place, and the icky, sticky energy around lotteries also was a difficulty to deal with when in an out-of-body state. So I think the project can be done in a different way and be every bit as effective. But having said that, we increased the prediction rate of the lottery from 1 in 300 million to 1 in 100 million, and a few times won a little small tiny bit. I don't know that that's the best application though for using this, and it's not the best application for me. It's far more interesting to me to explore other worlds and other cultures, but that's just my particular motivation. That's how I like to play in the garden versus rigorous scientific experimentation, which I don't know, it's not that interesting.
Yeah, well, I was amazed that you were working with the lottery. What would have happened if you would have won? Would you have split the proceeds, or?
Yes, actually, we did have a small contract saying that would,
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought that was a clever test. I mean, you could have tested lots of other things: missing people, paranormal activity. Could have done weather, volcano. You could have done lot if there's cities under the surface. You could have gone to there and had stuff like that. But to try to win the lottery using your superpowers, that's clever. That was clever.
Well, it was interesting because, and you probably remember the story, when I was originally jumping to the lottery building in Florida, I found other people there, out of body as well.
So you're not the only one doing it.
Not the only one doing that. And I actually had a wrestling match with this big, huge woman as we were both trying to get front position in front of the Powerballs as they came down. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to access this, and through a lot of traditions. And so, yeah, I'm certainly the only one.
So do you think people are doing that in Las Vegas too? I mean,
sure.
Yeah, but the house always wins. So how?
Well, so the house has learned that there's people like me, and they're on the lookout for that. So if you see somebody who keeps winning a lot, you come and interrupt them and distract them, or you send somebody to befriend them to distract them, to mess up their mojo. And if that doesn't work, you escort them out, because we can affect the machines, right?
Wow.
Yeah, we can know which one-armed bandit is getting ready to come out next. We can, make a roulette ball drop where we need it. We can take a deck of cards or multiple decks of cards and manifest the cards that we need out of a raw, shuffle. In fact, eventually at some point, my advanced students and I will be going to the Black Hawk casino because it's good practice. In the school setting with all of this energy, you learn very, very quickly, but the real world has a lot of random energies and random influences and lots of other things going on. And so when you start moving into mastery, you need to go into an adverse situation to really know and to really hone your training. And so going into a casino with the pressure of money and all the different emotions and stuff coming off of other people, and then whatever the house is doing, and they've got a lot of behind the scene things that are going on. So you're going basically into a situation that's stacked against you, and using your own personal mastery to hold your own and accomplish what it is you want. So that's kind of, if it was a martial art training, this is like, your third degree black belt test.
Wow.
To go into a casino, right? Because it's stacked against you, energetically, psychologically, emotionally, just about on every level.
Wow. So the next time if you do a process like that, you would do it differently. But the thing that I remembered is that you were not in the 90% accurate, correct? It was, what was the percentage?
Yeah, it was pretty high. Yeah. And now, because of the way our left brains think, we're going to say, oh, but she didn't win the lottery, so it doesn't count. And that's fine. We can say anything we want. And I didn't care. I didn't have an outcome in that. Instead we were looking at, of the 6 possible for each number of in the lottery. we were looking at the actual results. But the way the lottery is done, you can have 5 of those numbers right, but if you don't have the Powerball, you don't win.
Right.
So, but in terms of statistics and math, you can have very different results that are very high end versus even whether you won the lottery or not. So, yeah.
Well, how many people did he do that test with? Was it whittled down to just you, or were there
Well,
others?
I thought it was just me. Now, the random number generator, I don't know, they had 20 or 30 participants in that
Oh,
one. But I think this one I thought was just me. But there was a point late in the testing, in about the 3rd month, where I was jumping. By that time, the jump point was his bedroom off campus, because we ran into some problems with uh, I don't want to say,
okay.
but some experiments that were happening on campus caused some time warpage or tears, rifts in the time-space construct.
Okay.
And it was getting sucked into them. So we had to move the experiment jump point to a more energetically stable place, which became his bedroom. And there was one time when I ran into a wormhole intersecting mine. So understanding that traveling out of body, you create a wormhole, you travel in the wormhole to your destination. So you have a controlled container you're traveling in. And I ran into a wormhole that intersected mine. I followed it and landed in the wrong place, had to backtrack to where that traveler went wrong and take a different branch to get back on track to arrive at the correct time where the experiment was set up. And when I questioned him afterwards, I was like, do you have somebody else jumping to your bedroom? Because I just ran into another tunnel. Somebody else had been there. And that's when he admitted, yes, there was a woman named Alessandra, who was jumping out of Italy as well and working on the experiment. And yeah, we just basically crossed wormholes in the etheric.
Wow. And are the wormholes stable enough that they stay in place?
Yes.
So if
For
you
a little
did,
bit. Yeah. So if you get lost, like a fork in a wormhole, you can backtrack. Now, will that wormhole be there tomorrow? Probably not. But
oh, okay.
they're stable for a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's within hours. I
Yeah.
see. Oh, okay. Okay, that's interesting. I learned a lot today. Thank you.
And now there's naturally occurring wormholes, and those are a lot more stable, but they're not perfectly stable either because the solar system and the universe is a moving thing, and so you get eclipses and things that move and block a wormhole for a little while before moving on. And there's a lot of other factors I don't understand as well about naturally occurring wormholes.
So you probably don't, you probably watch the moon cycles and some of the cycles to make sure you don't jump in those time periods, or do
I
you?
don't because it's too complex and I don't understand it. Uh, Wormholes are piercing through, not in a linear way. They're folding the space-time construct. So even if I understood the orientation and the alignments of where planets, moons, asteroids, and everything else are, it's not going to make any difference when I'm in a folded plane piercing through. It's just too many moving parts. So what happens is if I hit a blockage or I hit a wormhole that's collapsing, which has happened before. Actually, I had to be rescued one time, which is a whole nother story. But another being who actually knew me from another planet came in and rescued me and another traveler who ended up in a collapsing wormhole, which they had actually put a block on the entrance of the wormhole so that I wouldn't use it. I didn't understand that why they didn't want me to use it, but they knew there was an eclipse that was happening that was going to collapse the wormhole.
Oh.
And I got caught in the collapsing wormhole and they had to extract me. So next time I use a natural wormhole, I'll be aware if there's a block that actually means something and not use it. So, but for the most part, I create my own wormholes, and that seems to go a lot better.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, I'm now going to show the IONS event that we're both going to be at this next week in near Washington, D.C. in Virginia. And this is the website conference.ions.org. And Angie will be one of the presenters there explaining about non-local consciousness. Oops, sorry. Let me stop share for a second. It does this sometimes. Sorry. But what the opportunity is for people to, if they are not able to come in person, they can still buy a ticket and join us online and get this wonderful opportunity to learn about these are a lot of these are researchers. These people are highly skilled. These are doctors and lawyers and research. Here's another remarkable researcher. Oops, it did again. Sorry. So I guess I'm not supposed to show it for that long. Doesn't want to show. So, but anyway, we want to invite people to go to conference.ions.org and join us online if you can't come in person, because they are recording most of the event. And I think you have 90 days afterwards to watch the recordings, even if you buy a ticket and come in person. So I know what I do is I'm a volunteer, so I don't get to see hardly anything while I'm there. So I do get to watch the recordings, and that's what I do with a TV table for a month or so afterwards, is every night watch one, because what you'll find is there'll be so many answers to your journey here that will change the way you look at your capability to love, be loved, contribute in service to others. It's so many beautiful things that it's an uncommon mix of special people that have either had near-death experiences or have had spiritually transformative experiences, or both. Many people have had multiple experiences of both kinds that are examples of how to be courageous in this life, because they got a perspective of what this really is, rather than the victimization model. So that's IONS, which is International Association for Near-Death Studies. And I think this is our 41st year of being in existence. Yeah, it's quite remarkable. I can't wait, Ange, for you to experience the energy.
I wish so much that I had known this existed when I died and left my body back in the Amazon. And I had no resources, and nobody I knew had heard anything about it. And I had no way to process it. And I think if I had have, I could have avoided this, the radical God slap in 2011 that caused me to awaken. And it could have moved gently, step by step, to arrive at the same place, probably by the same time or near enough.
Right.
And instead of having to get the God smack, which it doesn't matter. It's fine. I lived through it, but it was probably one of the biggest experiences in my life, even larger than dying and leaving my body in the Amazon.
Right. Well, that's what the beauty of this is because there's usually no words for the experience, and there's a sense of longing to go back to the experience, but not having the tools to know how to have that. And now that they know about you and your school, they can start to have tools that could bring them more into an understanding and a utilization of the data that was revealed, that field of love and that field of possibility that's available to all of us is possible through Angie's teachings. So I want to encourage everyone to go to your website. How's the best way to reach you?
Definitely through the website. There's a contact page, and my website, maybe you can put it up, is
I have been.
Oh, okay. Crystal Arrays, one word.com. CrystalArrays.com. And you can actually register to join the mystery school from that point. and you'll either slide into an existing class, depending what you already know, or we'll have one-on-ones until you're caught up and can slide into it. Classes are an hour and a half. We meet once a week for an hour and a half, and it's $40. And the reason that's not $60 or $80, that, you know, the more going rate out there, is because this is my job. And I just need enough to, you know, to pay for the Zoom, pay to keep the lights on, pay for the office. I'm not here trying to, you know, get a Lamborghini or anything else. In fact, you know, that kind of thing would be counteractive to the path I'm actually on. So
Right.
Just a fair exchange of energy, and it's very reasonable.
Right. Well, I want to encourage everyone to go to crystalarays.com, and I'll make sure that the link is in every one of the comment sections. And please, if you're interested in the near-death studies, which is another expansive experience, the articulation of these people that have had mystical experiences actually bring you along with them. The books, you feel like you're on a journey with them, please join us, because this is the big picture, and there is a pathway to it. So thank you so much, Ange. I can't wait to be with you again. I love you very much. Thank you, dear. So we're going to sign off now, but please, guys, please check out Angie and check out the IONS event. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.